So that was a massacre. Yeah, I really don't know how else to put the ending to WrestleDream and the end of Bryan Danielson as a performer in wrestling. Well, at least as a full-timer. They keep wording that. Like, it says his full-time run is over, but his part-time journey could still continue, though with how his body has been wearing down over the last few years, I wouldn't be standing surprised if it turns out that if it turns out this is Bryan's winding down his career at this point and decides to leave. So this is going to be a bit of a stretch here. So there have been a lot of things going around with the whole Moxley stuff that's been going on since before All Out. Jon Moxley had made his return and talked to Tony Schiavone and talked about his big plans and everything. And then he says he has a bone to pick with Darby Allin. And then he goes and gets all cryptically weird, saying to Tony Schiavone, "This is not your company anymore." Which, when that first happened, there was things going around. I'll get to that in a sec. But Jon Moxley ended that promo with this rather cryptic threat, but he still was still with Blackpool Combat Club, okay, and he's just having a hardcore edge now more than ever. He has a bone to pick with everybody after being gone for a few months. Trying to get a new character direction with himself. And of course, because the internet sucks and the IWC and people want to make mindless speculation, they go ahead and say hashtag AEW is Nazism, because of course. Has it been made clear that I hate the internet? And I think social media was the worst thing to ever happen for pro wrestling as well? Yeah. So, yeah. So, with that going on, Moxley would then continue his cryptic pathways, but still really be close to Blackpool Combat Club, and even starting to and Pac, who had won the Trios Championship with Claudio and Wheeler Yuta. Very interesting alliance, especially considering what happened last year at Blood and Guts when Don Callis, Pac, and Konosuke Takeshita left them for dead at the hands of the Elite. And I don't know if AEW has addressed it. Like I said, I have not watched the shows regularly like I used to, but I don't know if they ever addressed that. And then Pac would join in on the cryptic talk, and it's like, are they building to something where I think I know where they're going with this? But part of me is both interested and concerned. Primarily because of what it could do to AEW and what the name itself implies along the way, especially given who the father is. So, yeah. When these cryptic stuff started happening, there were reports going around heading into All Out that Shane McMahon was apparently in talks with AEW. There were factual pictures confirming that he was at least talking with Tony Khan. He had been speaking to Mercedes Moné, and just recently the Young Bucks get a picture with him, and it fueled speculation that he was the one calling the shots and telling Jon Moxley to do this stuff, because here's the thing. There is a continuity to be made from that. So, back in the WWE run, they all had together. Jon Moxley annoyed the crap out of Shane, and Bryan Danielson and him have a bit of a history. Some good, some bad. Mostly insane. And mostly me remembering, oh yeah, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens were the good guys and everyone else sucked. And, well, people were very hesitant to bring Sami Zayn into the fold of, not Sami Zayn, sorry, to bring Shane McMahon into the fold of AEW because, well, it's his last name. That's the problem, especially given all the recent stuff that's been going on with his father and how much the McMahon name is pretty much a poison. and could detrimentally hurt a company, especially. But I don't know the idea of Shane coming in and doing stuff for AEW. Like, I feel like he would have to prove himself to prove he's not a treacherous scumbag piece of you-know-what, like his father, like Triple H could be accused of at times, especially during the Reign of Terror days, or like how Stephanie McMahon apparently treats herself as a pioneer of women's wrestling, even though she did, like, maybe at best 8 matches, and not a lot of them were memorable, and the other one had the wrong winner, which was Stephanie, ironically, and the one where she fought her father was then confirmed to be Vince's way of punishing her because she said no to the marriage idea of her and Hunter getting married on TV, on pay-per-view specifically, which, when you think about it, kind of makes that match even more disturbed. We live in a society. So, yeah, there was speculation going on with that, but then I had a thought. So recently, Jon Moxley had finally secured a trademark for Switchblade Conspiracy, which was related to his old partner in crime, Sami Callihan, who was in Impact TNA Wrestling for a long time, and then he disappeared this year. No one has seen him since. He hasn't been doing any shows, as far as I'm aware. I looked on Cage Match, no information I could find on him, no updates of what's going on with him. So that led me to think, is this the route they're going with? Sami Callihan is the mastermind, and he and Jon Moxley have hooked up back together, and he's orchestrating things from the shadows because they're probably going to reignite the hacker gimmick that Sami Callihan was doing in Impact and then even in NXT for a bit. So I thought, is it Sami Callihan or is it Shane McMahon? Like, those are the only two people that made sense to me. That could be the mastermind, the person pulling the strings, the grand puppeteer. We won't know for a while, it seems, because even the announcers are like, even the commentary team is like asking who is telling Jon Moxley to do all this. They think it might just be Jon Moxley going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I don't blame them for thinking that. But it would be interesting to see Sami or Shane be the mastermind, though I kind of would want Sami Callihan, mostly just for safety concerns for how AEW's perception could be affected from having Shane McMahon, albeit the least problematic McMahon of the entire McMahon family, which is saying a lot, and at the same time very little, and especially with his last name being, well, McMahon, and AEW was built primarily to oppose the McMahon-controlled dynasty of WWE. One of the reasons, at least. The other was to be an alternative, and the other was to stop having WWE piss everyone off every single freaking week. I say they grossly succeeded on that part, but it's made people go ahead and think they don't need AEW now. But that's a different subject. So with all that going on, all outcomes. It's the hardcore violence show that it is, and Blackpool Combat Club looks like they have Bryan's back. They protect him from the wrath of Christian Cage, ready to cash in his poker chip. And then after Bryan defeats Jungle Boy Jack Perry, the other shoe drops. Claudio European uppercuts Bryan Danielson. Yuta is confused and shocked. Pac is holding him back, albeit in a hug, not really like restraining him in the most violent way possible. Even though I would have expected that from Pac. Also, I'll get to this other part in a sec, to this next part in a sec. And then there's the whole plastic bag strangling. Yeah, Jon Moxley wrapped a plastic bag around Bryan's head and suffocated him. He suffocated him on live pay-per-view in what could easily have killed him. And when people were looking back on the image, they noticed Bryan is smiling. And part of me wonders, Bryan, I'm scared to know what Brie has to do to make you notice her. Like, let's be real, Bryan. You're a disturbed, horny man. A very disturbed, horny man. And you need help. But I digress. So, yeah, that had happened, and Bryan would then be out for a week and would soon be gone for Grand Slam. Jon Moxley manipulates Darby Allin into fighting him at Grand Slam. Moxley beats him while Bryan goes on to fight his former old storied rival. Oh god, that was fun. Nigel McGuinness in his basically return singles match after God knows how many years. And history is made with Moxley and Bryan is set to be the main event of WrestleDream. Now, there was a report going around that Darby Allin was actually going to be the one to dethrone Bryan Danielson and take home the gold, become the world champion. Part of my theory of that is actually quite simple. Darby Allin is insane, and Tony Khan's run out of ideas on how to stop him, because Darby Allin can't control himself with his reckless abandoned wrestling style. And, well, Bryan probably can't convince him either. But Darby is planning to go to climb Mount Everest next year, because originally he was supposed to this year, and even cut a promo on live television where he admits that there's a high probability he'll die. Oh joy. And then Jay White broke his foot, which I'm going to use as a headcanon, saying that Jay White was deliberately ordered to break Darby Allin's foot to stop him from going on a suicide mission. Sadly, that didn't work, because now Darby Allin's more emboldened than ever to climb Mount Everest, and now wants to go into space, and I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to go on Boeing, because, hey, he's insane. Why not go further? And we all know how Boeing's operations are these days. Mostly in shady cover-ups and probable mysterious circumstances happening. But I digress. And I just wanted to bring this up in the video because he is part of the storyline. Why is Pac constantly shirtless even when he's not wrestling on the show? Could someone tell me that? I've been wanting to know that for a minute now. Why is Pac always shirtless? He's always in his trunk. Like, some people even start to think that Pac does that everywhere he goes to show up his impressive physique. And I'm thinking to myself, where would he put his wallet if he's going public places and half naked in his underwear? And I'm scared to answer that myself. And I don't want to know. So now that that's out of the way, Jon Moxley versus Bryan Danielson is set for WrestleDream. But before that, Bryan Danielson has one last two matches. One, he fights a 30-minute match with Kazuchika Okada, continuing his saga. Don't worry, I hopefully will plan to make a video about that. And Bryan admits afterwards that heading into WrestleDream, he was losing feeling in his legs fighting Okada. Oh, for fuck's sake. Yeah. Yeah, that's concerning. And then all this other stuff started coming out, and then Jimmy Jacobs was fired, or released, or just left, or his contract expired. Then Maria Kanellis got mad about AEW not contacting her for months on end, which I'm pretty sure will piss off the Undisputed Kingdom for a bit. So it was an AEW pay-per-view week, so we need to have some bad stuff happen in order to keep the tradition going. I don't know either why that's a thing. But Mox and Bryan is set, and they have one last tag team match between Bryan and Yuta, and, well, Jon Moxley and Claudio. And yeah, Bryan really should have foreseen this, because Claudio tells Wheeler Yuta that Bryan doesn't care about him. And then Bryan, during the match, proceeds to leave the arena, beat up Jon Moxley. Blackpool Combat Club beats the hell out of Wheeler Yuta. Wheeler Yuta is on the ground, whimpering. trying to reach out to Bryan. It's like, I'm in pain. After Bryan comes out and chases them off, and he just does the yes, 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 even though WWE just recently trademarked that, so I'm pretty sure they're going to be pissed. So really think about this. Wheeler Yuta got his villain arc, the Wheeler Yuta villain arc initiated the moment Bryan didn't check on him. That's my best theory. And then you have to remember he did this just to piss off WWE, no doubt. So Wheeler Yuta was the third man in Bryan's priorities. His first priority was getting revenge on Moxley. The second priority was pissing out WWE. Wheeler Yuta, I know you're in pain, but you can walk it off, right? I'm like, look at me. I get bloody chested every single week I can get. Yeah, and I'm not on the couch with Alfred Bree's bed. I must stress, Bryan has admitted he has a fetish. He won't say the F word, but he'll definitely admit he has a fetish. So yeah, that happened. So I was like, okay, well, you're just gonna screw him over big time, calling it. If I made bets on it, I would have won cash. So Mox and Bryan have their moment in WrestleDream. Mox comes out. Oh, I did forget to mention this. Mox has Maria Shafir accompanying him everywhere now. She's part of this group now. I do have a question. Maria Shafir has been struggling for a lot of people to get connected with ever since she's teamed up with Moxley all of a sudden. Like, now everyone's more invested in her than ever, and she seems to be thriving in this role, it seems. But yeah, nice to see they're giving her more of a chance now. After years of stagnation she suffered from, both as a performer and on the card. But yeah, Moxley comes out. Oh, and they also crippled Private Party for about a week. So that happened. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff happening heading into All Out, even though with all these big shows going on at the same time. I mean, heading into WrestleDream. So yeah, Blackpool Combat Club kind of made everyone their enemies. Shame. But as that was going on, Bryan Danielson comes out and his song The Final Countdown by Europe is played. And then Moxley ruins the entrance and it beats the crap out of Bryan, tries to suffocate him, tries to choke him out. Bryan fights back. Maria Shafir gets involved. Bryan drops her to the floor and the fans go crazy to see a woman get beat up. It's a thing. We're sadistic, I know. Let's see. Chairs were involved, and then after that, I was kind of surprised how the match went. Like, I was expecting like super violence with how violent Moxley has gotten, and you know, his direction and his promos and his aesthetic, and you know, trying to murder Bryan with suffocation tactics. Yeah. Oh, and pillorizing Private Party with a hammer. So, this all happened, I must stress. This all happened in the span of a month. We are insane, right? So, yeah. With all that, I was expecting a brutal beatdown, fight to the finish, fight to the death type of vibe with this match, and I did not get that. Yeah, I was surprised by that. I was kind of creeped out a little bit with how scientifically technical it was getting at times. Like, what's going? Like, am I watching this? Like, here's the thing: storytelling wise, it's much better than their first encounter, but pass wise, I think their first match in AEW together at AEW Revolution all those years ago was much more supreme. Plus, William Regal coming out and being a boss was awesome. And then, yeah, then they bring in all the staples that make an AEW match, such as the uses of environment destruction, pile drivers, even the staple usage of using the concrete floor. That goes down as you would expect. But really, it was very a technically scientific wrestling match, which it was good, but it was like the story I was given and the payoff is clearly not the same thing. So clearly they have to have something paying off with this. They have to have some violent moment happen. And Bryan and Moxley are trying to get the crowd riled up as bad as they can, because earlier in the night there was a big triple threat match, which I will eventually get to, that stole the show and tore the house down to asunder. And yeah, and Bryan is the hometown hero, so he did try. I'll give him credit. He did try. And then it reached the precipice, the apotheosis, the highest point of the moment. Moxley chokes Bryan out cold. After dropping him on his head twice, targeting the neck and dropping him on concrete. Yeah, the neck was very used as a target because Bryan has publicly come out about his neck and the fragile state it's in. So naturally, in both WWE and AEW, they must continue the fetish of targeting the injured area because making it worse is apparently good. So yeah, that happened. And then, after all that, Moxley dropping Bryan on his head multiple times, Bryan gets choked out. Moxley becomes a four-time AEW World Heavyweight Champion. Yes. So with that, Moxley is the victor. And Bryan in this match was way... Like, the way they portray Bryan in this match is like the old man cowboy giving out one last fight, knowing that, yeah, this is it. This is the end. But I'm going to go out swinging as best I can, guns blazing. The old cowboy, if I'm going down swinging. And, yeah, Moxley was pretty dominant throughout most of this match, I feel. And then the ending came, and it justified, and it made me go, okay, this is why they were saving all the violence up. But there was people complaining about how Moxley beat Bryan, and I was like, I get it, but on the other hand, there were people complaining about AEW no longer being the pro wrestling company that they set out to be, so it's like, you wanted them to be more sports oriented. There are some matches there are going to be big matches that you would feel like would end in a spectacular way, but could end on a flat note. But I feel like the ending afterwards more than made up for that, because we witnessed something tragic. We witnessed the death of the American Dragon. So Moxley takes the AEW World Championship and puts it in a black bag for Claudio to collect and take out. The commentators are stunned and trying to wonder what's going on and trying to hope they don't do anything to Bryan. Then Jon Moxley gets the plastic bag and prepares to strangle him again and probably make Bryan very, very, very aroused. Which I'm pretty sure will be awkward conversation afterwards. And then Wheeler Yuta and Darby Allin show up because they have bones to pick with Moxley, especially Darby after he was supposed to have this moment and he was screwed out of it and manipulated by Moxley. And then Wheeler Yuta, after ironically checking on Bryan, proceeds to use the Busaiku knee on Darby Allin and looking all conflicted and heartbroken at what he's done. And it becomes a massacre because Blackpool Combat Club, which is looking more and more suspicious like a switchblade conspiracy, are now in control of the ring and now have complete control of the environment, because now it's going to get uglier. Wheeler Yuta is conflicted. He doesn't know what to do with his emotions. Oh God, he's having an emotional breakdown. And then subsequently gets his ass kicked afterwards. Probably, maybe not really, but it's be funny to think about. because he's been the fall guy for some time now. And they demolish Bryan. Wheeler Yuta, making his choice, strangles Bryan with the plastic bag. Moxley using it to test his loyalty. Are you with Bryan or are you with the fixing of the company? I'll get to that part as well. But yeah. Then enough was enough. Like, security came out to try and stop the massacre. Then they proceed to get their asses kicked, as all security officers do in AEW and wrestling in general. Then Jeff Jarrett proceeds to, I shall save you, then gets his ass kicked. Then Private Party comes out, prepares to be the saviors of the story, gets his ass kicked. And as Bryan is being strangled, Darby Allin is taped up to the ring and is forced to watch and begs them to stop doing the mutilating of Bryan, the massacring of it all. He's begging, he's crying, and it's just so delicious to see, because I'm a sadistic son of a bitch. And then not only Private Party comes out, but the other faces are trying to save the day, and then it reaches a critical point. They put a chair around Ryan's neck. Moxley places his hand on his head, like trying to say, like, this has to be done. And Claudio does him in. He smashes the neck of Bryan and his back and his spinal area with the steel chair, proceeding to kill the American Dragon. And the crowd really made this work well. Because it was quiet. It was so silent. You could probably hear a pin needle drop. And it was so intense to hear the crowd just be quiet like. And then a chant that people would never have imagined coming from the fans were screaming, "Fuck you, Moxley." Because they know what he's done. They know what he's become. And he just murdered their hometown hero in his hometown. Murdered him on pay-per-view. And then the rest of the locker room of faces, such as the returning Adam Cole, I'll get to that in another video eventually. Let's see, returning Adam Cole, Orange Cassidy, Hook, and Jeff Jarrett come back, rush out to the ring to try and chase them off, and they check on Bryan. They try to help Darby Allin get out of the trapped tape handcuff state he was in, and he's just broken down and crying, like trying to silently apologize, like he's sorry he couldn't save Bryan. He managed to save Sting, but he saved Sting from the Young Bucks dethroning him and ending Sting's career on a high note, to now being the witness of his ultimate failure in not saving Bryan Danielson from a cruel fate. And then stretcher and medics personnel come out, pack him up as the crowd starts chanting "Thank you, Bryan," but the crowd is very much mutedly silent for the most part. The show ends as we see the faces, Orange Cassidy, Darby, Hook, all just looking at Bryan and being like, oh, what are we going to do now? Who's going to stop them? We got our Infinity War ending, essentially. Thanos wiping out half the universe. Moxley now in possession of the AEW title. Blackpool Comic Club in possession of the Trios titles. And not only that, when you think about it, all the belts are now belonging to the villains. The Elite have the TNT belt, the Continental belt. Maria May has the Women's Championship. Mercedes Moné has the TBS Championship. The Young Bucks have the Tag Team titles. Konosuke Takeshita won the International title of this at WrestleDream, and now Moxley has the ultimate prize. This is now the Night of the Villains, essentially. Surprisingly, no Shane McMahon, so I thought for sure they were going to do another big surprise moment like they did last year with Adam Copeland. But beggars can't be choosers. But now we can firmly say the first dark age of AEW has begun. And you shall look upon their gaze and despair. So now we cut to black. We don't know what happens next heading into Dynamite. Good stuff. It was good stuff. Well, there were people who were mixed about the ending, but I'm gonna be real. Bryan, he would have definitely asked for it to go out like this. He wanted to go out, putting everyone over as much as possible, and giving Moxley the biggest fuck you he's ever gotten in order to make what will most likely be Darby Allin's big moment to happen. But they could also tease Orange Cassidy versus Moxley round 3, I think. And that's going to be pretty damn awesome. I feel like Moxley should do a whole Reign of Terror year for next year, heading into Allin, Texas. And I actually have an idea for that. So AEW now is in a position where they have the chance to do the funniest fucking thing ever, and I'm all for it. Because Bryan's out, Mox is the champ, Darby will probably be the challenger, and Christian Cage still has the poker chip. I actually pitched this. So I went and pitched Bryan Danielson returning, being basically the special guest enforcer of Moxley versus Darby. Darby wins the world title. We celebrate. We get Christian Cage coming out looking ready to cash in his poker chip. Bryan and Darby stand side by side. And then Bryan Bushido knees Darby to oblivion. And Christian Cage cashes in the chip and wins the AEW World Championship. We repeat SummerSlam 2013 ending because I am insane and a cruel storyteller, and that's how I roll. They have the opportunity to do that. They have an opportunity to really make that kind of ending for All in Texas next year. And that can lead to Bryan Danielson versus Darby Allin. And honestly, there is the foundation you could work with Darby, why Bryan would betray Darby like that after everything Darby's done for Bryan and trying to defend his honor after everything Moxley did. Bryan probably doesn't see Darby as much as of a wrestler as he is a crash test dummy, because Darby Allin's wrestling style is very car wreck based. Oh, don't get me wrong, he's a great wrestler, but it's very car wreck based and very insane. And oh my god, the fact that I still remember him throwing himself into glass is one thing that I'll never forget. Especially when I saw my AEW buddies cringe and freak out at that, which was hilarious, and I got to revel in the sadistic madness of it all. Shout out to the Jeff Meacham Network on that. And James Hubert. But those are speculatory ideas. We could definitely not do that idea, but it could lead to some interesting storylines they could do. Plus, we also still gotta wait for the great Kenny Omega's epic return this coming January, because Kota Ibushi decided to say that there probably will be 2 to 3 more months before Kenny Omega is ready to return to the ring, which once again means 2 to 3 months, which means January, which means Royal Rumble speculation nonsense, even though that would not make sense at all. Unless AEW does a partnership with WWE, which will probably never happen considering how much egotistical nonsense is in the politics. But yeah, it's a pretty insane time right now, and I'm looking forward to what's next. Especially with AEW now going on HBO Max, still calling that David Zaslav suck it. Just like I'm still calling Twitter Elon Musk suck it. But that's then, this is now. And thank you, Bryan Danielson, for your contributions to wrestling, going out on your own terms now. Just stop doing the diving headbutt and really give Brave the attention she deserves, because, by God, you have problems, man. But this was your host, Eric Brown of Neo Reality Entertainment. This was NRE The Wrestleverse. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, check out our content in the description below. Follow me on Twitter. Stay tuned and like and subscribe, and I'll see you all again next time. Peace and take care. Take care, everyone, and peace out.